The Night Watchman. On a suffocating afternoon in the summer of 1906, a night watchman named Michael Butler climbed to the 8th floor of the unfinished structure to begin his shift. He never came down. Sometime after dusk, someone struck Butler from behind with a heavy metal bolt. He did not have time to shout. He did not have time to run. They lifted him, and they threw him. 8 stories down, his body struck the construction debris below with a sound that workers later described as wet and final. New York newspapers called it the mid-air murder. A crime without a body of truth. The city erupted. Tabloids published lurid illustrations of Butler's fall. Headlines speculated about union violence, revenge killings, jealous grudges. Police arrested multiple suspects. Witnesses contradicted each other openly. Evidence vanished between the site and the courtroom. The trial dragged on for weeks. And then, nothing. Every accused man walked free. No one was convicted. No one was punished. No one was even reliably identified. The building absorbed its first death, and construction never stopped. Steel rose the next morning. Stone was set that afternoon. The schedule did not slip. The Plaza learned its first truth. Human lives were cheaper than deadlines. Opening night. On October 1st, 1907, exactly 2 years after groundbreaking, the new Plaza Hotel opened its doors. The response was instant. Reservations had been booked months in advance. Rooms began at $2.50 per night, but the grandest suites commanded 10 times that amount. The wealthy arrived not because they needed beds, but because they needed to be seen. Alfred Gwynne Vanderbilt checked in. Diamond Jim Brady arrived with trunks that required extra staff. Industrialists, financiers, socialites, they came to perform wealth in public. The entrance became theater. Red carpet, uniformed doormen, Fifth Avenue traffic slowing to watch arrivals like a parade. To stay at the Plaza was not about comfort, it was about announcement.
Success without mercy. The hotel was profitable within its first year. Harry S. Black stood at the top of New York society, having created exactly what he wanted. The world's greatest hotel bore witness to his ambition. It did not reward him. Black's later years collapsed under depression, failed ventures, and a disintegrating marriage. In 1930, he took his own life. The chandeliers did not dim. The doormen did not stop opening doors. The guests did not stop arriving. The Plaza remained. The first ghosts move in. By the time Harry Black was buried, the hotel had already learned something else. Owners come and go. Dreamers rise and fall. The building endures. And within 2 years of opening, it would receive its most extraordinary resident yet, a woman who arrived with servants, paintings, exotic animals, and a lion cub. She called herself a princess. She demanded 14 rooms, and she insisted that her lion be treated as a guest. The Plaza did not say no. The princess and her lion. The Plaza had already learned how to survive death. What it had not yet learned was how dangerous indulgence could be. That lesson arrived in 1909, wearing silk gowns, speaking with a European accent, and introducing herself with a title no one could verify, but no one dared challenge. She said she was a princess, and the Plaza believed her. She did not inquire about availability. She did not negotiate rates. She did not explain herself. She informed the management. She required a 14-room suite, space for 12 servants, daily access for high-profile visitors, and accommodations for her animals. The ledger books hesitated. The staff exchanged glances. Then the Plaza did what it would do again and again across the next century. It said yes. Her name was Elizabeth Wilma Luof-Parlagi, sometimes rendered as Wilma von Luof-Parlagi, depending on the occasion, the audience, or her mood. She had been born in Hungary in the early 1960s. She had not been born a princess. That came later.
Inventing royalty. Wilma's title came from a brief marriage to a Russian prince, Prince Lwów, an arrangement that provided her with exactly two things: a name that opened doors, a story she could tell for the rest of her life. The marriage dissolved quickly. The title did not. But even without it, Wilma had something far more valuable. She had talent. The painter of power. Long before she arrived in New York, Wilma had trained in Europe's most serious academies. Portrait painting was not decoration in that world. It was propaganda. She painted people who mattered. Her portrait of her mother brought her early acclaim. European aristocrats followed. Then came heads of state. She painted Kaiser Wilhelm II of Germany, capturing not just his face, but his brittle vanity. She exhibited internationally. In 1893, she won a gold medal at the Chicago World's Fair. By the time she crossed the Atlantic, she was not merely an artist. She was an event. The Plaza as a stage. New York at the turn of the century was obsessed with Europe. European accents implied refinement. European titles implied legitimacy. European eccentricity was tolerated, sometimes celebrated, if it came wrapped in money. Wilma understood this perfectly. At the Plaza, she did not live quietly. She performed. She dressed in flowing gowns that belonged to another century. She received guests reclining on divans like an empress holding court. She demanded that staff address her using full aristocratic protocol. And the staff complied, because she paid, because she tipped, because she attracted attention. And attention was currency. The menagerie. The animals came gradually at first. Dogs, then more dogs, then birds, falcons, owls, creatures that did not belong indoors, then bears, then alligators. The Plaza adjusted. Rooms were reinforced. Staff learned not to ask questions. Guests whispered and stared. This was New York. If you were rich enough, eccentricity became charm. But none of it prepared the hotel for the lion. The lion named Goldfleck. The story varies slightly depending on who tells it, but the essential facts remain. Wilma attended a Ringling Brothers circus performance. She saw a lion cub in one of the acts. She decided the lion was hers. Money changed hands. And suddenly, the Plaza Hotel had a lion as a resident. His name was Goldfleck. Where do you put a lion? This was not a metaphor. This was a logistical problem. The solution Wilma chose was both practical and surreal. She put the lion in her bathtub. Goldfleck spent his days lounging in porcelain, confused, pampered, fed by servants who were being paid far more than they ever expected when they applied for hotel work. When the weather was pleasant, Wilma walked him on a leash through Central Park. New Yorkers watched. They stared. They shrugged. They moved on. This city has always had a high tolerance for the absurd, provided it is expensive. The General and the Princess. Among Wilma's admirers was one of America's most improbable characters, General Daniel Sickles, Civil War hero, political operator, man who shot his wife's lover in Blade Daylight and walked free on the first successful temporary insanity defense in U.S. history. He had lost his leg at Gettysburg and donated it to the Army Medical Museum, then visited it regularly for the rest of his life. By the time he met Wilma, Sickles was in his 90s, sharp-tongued and entirely devoted. Legend insists he helped her acquire Goldfleck. It feels appropriate. The bill comes due. For 5 years, Vilma lived as if money were an abstraction. Paintings came and went, servants rotated, animals multiplied. Her income was always mysterious. Checks arrived from Europe, commissions appeared from nowhere. And then, in 1914, the world collapsed. War exploded across Europe. The patrons disappeared. The money stopped. The flow that sustained her vanished overnight. The Plaza waited. The Plaza always waited. The flight. Vilma did not leave gracefully. She fled. Behind her, she left unpaid bills totaling $12,000, a staggering sum at the time. Hotel staff seized what they could: paintings, furniture, personal effects. Most of it was not enough. The lion was gone. Goldfleck did not survive the upheaval. Vilma arranged for him to be buried at Hartsdale Pet Cemetery, among the dogs and cats of New York's elite. Even in death, the lion kept good company. The end of a princess. Vilma lasted less than a decade after leaving the Plaza. She died in 1923, not in luxury, not surrounded by admirers, but in poverty, in a cramped Manhattan room surrounded by unsold paintings no one wanted. The woman who had painted emperors, who had walked a lion through Central Park, who had demanded 14 rooms and received them, forgotten. The Plaza did not mention her again. Her suite was cleaned, renovated, rented. What the building learned. The Plaza had learned something new. Not about money, not about fame, but about excess. If blood taught it how to open, the princess taught it how people fall. Ambition could build, indulgence could rot. And the next people to test that lesson were already arriving, young, beautiful, reckless, and absolutely convinced that consequences were for other generations. They were married, they were famous, and they were about to jump into a fountain. They were 23 years old, the world adored them, and they treated the Plaza like a playground. When the Plaza met youth. The Plaza had hosted aristocrats. It had indulged eccentrics. It had survived blood, scandal, and excess. What it had not yet faced was youth that believed it was immortal. That arrived in the spring of 1920, wearing tailored suits, silk dresses, and the unshakable certainty that the party would never end. Their names were F. Scott Fitzgerald and Zelda Fitzgerald, and they treated the Plaza like a dare. Fame in 3 days. Scott Fitzgerald was 23 years old when his first novel, This Side of Paradise, was published. It sold out in 3 days. Critics announced the arrival of a new voice, young, reckless, lyrical, unmistakably modern. Women clipped his photograph from newspapers. Editors called. Advances followed. Scott had spent years convincing Zelda Sayer to marry him. She had refused, not until he proved he could be somebody. Now he had. 2 weeks after the book's release, they married and checked in to the Biltmore Hotel to begin what they believed would be an endless honeymoon. The Biltmore threw them out. So did the Commodore. Hotels had rules. Scott and Zelda did not. Why the Plaza said yes. The Plaza, inexplicably, did not eject them. Perhaps management sensed something useful in their chaos. Perhaps they understood publicity before publicity had a name. Perhaps the building simply recognized kindred spirits. Whatever the reason, the Plaza became their headquarters. They rented an apartment nearby, but they really lived, inside the hotel. The basement grill room became their salon. Writers, drinkers, admirers, and opportunists gathered around them like moths to a flame that promised brilliance or burns. During Prohibition, the Plaza pretended not to notice Scott's personal bottle hidden somewhere behind the bar. Everyone pretended. The performance of being alive. Scott and Zelda did not behave like guests. They behaved like characters. They rode on top of taxis down Fifth Avenue. They danced where dancing was forbidden. They laughed too loudly. They drank too much. Zelda treated the world as if it were a stage designed exclusively for her amusement. Scott watched, wrote, drank, and watched himself watching. They understood something essential before most people did. Fame was not about achievement. It was about visibility. The Fountain. Directly outside the plaza's main entrance sits the Pulitzer Fountain, crowned by Pomona, Roman goddess of abundance. It was never meant for swimming. Legend says that one night, Scott and Zelda stripped down to their underwear and dove in, splashing beneath the statue while guests watched from illuminated windows above. Did it happen exactly that way? It no longer matters. The story became truth the moment people repeated it. Beautiful, drunk, defiant. They had turned Fifth Avenue into their private joke.
The Plaza as symbol. Scott Fitzgerald never forgot the Plaza. He transformed it into literature. In The Beautiful and Damned, his doomed couple wanders its corridors, rich and empty. In The Great Gatsby, the Plaza hosts the novel's emotional execution. On a suffocating summer afternoon, in a Plaza suite, Tom Buchanan dismantles Jay Gatsby's dream piece by piece. The heat presses in, the city roars outside, the illusion collapses. Fitzgerald understood the Plaza instinctively. It was not just wealth, it was what wealth promised and failed to deliver. When the music slowed. The Jazz Age did not overnight end, it frayed. Scott's income peaked, then faltered. Zelda began writing, painting, dancing, always dancing, driven by an intensity that frightened those who loved her. They moved to Paris, then the Riviera, then back again. Everyone drank too much. They called it sophistication. By 1929, the cracks were visible. By 1930, Zelda suffered her first major breakdown. The woman who had once leapt into fountains now disappeared behind hospital walls. After the roar. Scott spent the 1930s in decline. His books stopped selling. Hollywood hired him and ignored him. He drank more. He hoped less. He worked on a novel about the movie industry that he would never finish. He died of a heart attack in December 1940. He was 44. The obituaries treated him as a relic. Zelda's end. Zelda outlived him by 8 years. She spent much of that time institutionalized at Highland Hospital in North Carolina. In March 1948, a fire broke out. Zelda was trapped on an upper floor. She died there, unable to escape. She was 57. What the Plaza remembered. Afternoon tea continued in the Palm Court. The fountain kept flowing. Guests arrived who had never heard of Scott Fitzgerald, but something lingered. The Plaza had learned another lesson. It could make fame sparkle, it could magnify brilliance, and it could watch it burn out completely without flinching. The next person to understand this would turn the Plaza into a child's kingdom, invent a 6-year-old anarchist, and create the hotel's most famous resident. She lived on the top floor. Her name was Eloise. She charged everything to her mother's account. She terrorized the staff, and she belonged entirely to the Plaza. The Plaza had learned blood. It had learned excess. It had learned fame and collapse. What it had not yet learned was how to laugh at itself. That lesson arrived quietly in the 1950s, trailing cigarette smoke, witty insults, and a voice so commanding that movie stars went silent when it spoke. Her name was Kay Thompson, and she did not intend to leave.
Before she ever became famous for a fictional child, Kay Thompson was already one of the most powerful, invisible figures in Hollywood. She was not a star. She was the person stars feared disappointing. Studios called her when singers needed to sound better than nature had allowed. She shaped phrasing, rhythm, breath, details that separated amateurs from legends. She worked with Frank Sinatra before he became Sinatra. She refined Lena Horne's phrasing. She became indispensable to Judy Garland, not just professionally, but personally. Kay did not nurture gently. She demanded, and people rose to meet her. Hollywood never knew what to do with her. Kay had everything studios claimed to want: talent, presence, a voice that could cut glass. What she lacked was predictability. She was too theatrical for supporting roles, too unconventional for leading ones, too sharp to disappear quietly. In 1957, she nearly stole Funny Face from Audrey Hepburn, playing a fashion magazine editor with so much energy that audiences wondered why this woman wasn't headlining everything. Hollywood hesitated, so Kay left, moving into the Plaza. She did not stay at the Plaza. She occupied it. Sometime in the early 1950s, Kay Thompson took up residence in a suite high above Fifth Avenue and treated the hotel as a personal extension of her personality. She decorated freely. She entertained loudly. She behaved as if permanence were her birthright. The management, long trained by princesses and widows, adapted. Kay paid, Kay tipped, Kay entertained guests who mattered. The Plaza once again said yes. A character is born. Kay Thompson had always carried something mischievous inside her, a refusal to behave, a delight in rule-breaking. Living at the Plaza sharpened it. She began telling stories.
Stories about a little girl who lived in the hotel, a 6-year-old who ran through hallways, pressed elevator buttons indiscriminately, poured water down mail chutes, and treated uniformed adults as optional obstacles. The girl had perfect pitch for chaos. Her name was Eloise. Not a sweet child. This is important. Eloise was not cute. She was not polite. She was not instructional. She was not safe. She was an anarchist in a hairbow. Friends laughed at the stories. Then they demanded more. Someone suggested Kay write them down. Kay resisted. Then she met Hilary Knight. Seeing Eloise. Knight was young, hungry, and capable of seeing what Kay was doing. Not a children's book, a provocation. Kay performed Eloise aloud, becoming her completely, while Knight sketched furiously. What emerged was not just a character, but a world. The Plaza itself became a character. Its marble floors turned into racetracks. Its chandeliers became obstacles. Its authority figures became targets. In 1955, Eloise was published. It detonated. Why it worked? Children loved it because it was forbidden. Adults loved it because it was aspirational. Eloise did not want wealth. She wanted freedom. She lived inside luxury without respecting it, and the Plaza, unintentionally, had provided the perfect setting. The hotel embraces its creation. The Plaza understood branding long before the word became fashionable. It embraced Eloise. A portrait was commissioned and hung in the lobby. Guests posed beside her. A suite quietly became the Eloise Room. The hotel had discovered a mascot who never aged, never complained, and never required a paycheck. Kay Thompson watched carefully. She allowed some things. She refused others. Eloise, it turned out, was not for sale. The mother who never appears. Readers noticed something strange. Eloise lives with a nanny, a dog, a turtle, but not her mother. The mother exists only through postcards and credit card charges. Speculation followed. Was it autobiography? Fantasy? Refusal? Kay never answered directly. Mystery, she understood, was part of the magic. The theft. Sometime in the late 1960s, during a college dance held in the Plaza's grand ballroom, the portrait vanished. Gone. Despite investigations, it was never recovered. Somewhere, perhaps still, Eloise hangs on a private wall, stolen, priceless, irreplaceable. The Plaza did not replace it. Some absences are louder than substitutions. The quiet end. Kate Thompson outlived her era. Hollywood moved on. Her performing days ended. The world remembered Eloise more than her creator. But she was not alone. Judy Garland was gone, but her daughter Liza Minnelli remained. When Kay could no longer care for herself, Liza took her in. Kay died in July 1998 at 88 years old. The obituaries focused on Eloise. Kay would have expected nothing else. What the Plaza learned. The Plaza had learned something no other luxury hotel ever truly mastered. It could belong to imagination, not just to money, not just to power, to mischief, to childhood, to the idea that marble halls could become playgrounds if you had the nerve. And soon, someone else would test that nerve. A writer who believed parties could rearrange society itself. He was planning a gathering. He intended to invite everyone. 500 guests, black and white masks, one night meant to last forever. When the Plaza peaked. The Plaza had hosted royalty, artists, criminals, widows, children, and geniuses. It had survived blood, lions, madness, and fame. But in November of 1966, it reached something like a climax. Not because of money, not because of power, but because one man understood something terrifyingly well. If you put the right people in the same room at the right moment, you can change the shape of society. His name was Truman Capote, and he was about to burn every bridge he had without realizing it. The man who understood rooms. Capote understood rooms the way generals understand terrain. Who stood near whom, who was seated beside who was not invited. These were not details. They were weapons.
By 1966, Capote was untouchable. His book, In Cold Blood, had done something no American work had ever done before. It invented a genre, the non-fiction novel. Journalism written like literature. Murder turned into art. It made him rich. It made him famous. It made him dangerous. He decided to celebrate. Choosing the Plaza. There was never any doubt about the location. The Plaza Hotel was the only place large enough, old enough, and symbolic enough to hold what he envisioned. The Grand Ballroom, November 28, 1966. A Monday because weekends were vulgar. The dress code was absolute, black and white only. Masks required until midnight. And one guest of honor, Katharine Graham, newly widowed, powerful, and perfectly chosen. Capote was not throwing a party. He was issuing a statement. The guest list as a knife. He wrote the guest list in a black and white marble composition notebook, the kind children used in school. The irony delighted him. 540 names, every one deliberate. He invited Frank Sinatra and Mia Farrow, Andy Warhol, Lauren Bacall. Henry Fonda rewrote the story entirely. Norman Mailer nearly came to blows with McGeorge Bundy over Vietnam. Friends intervened. By 2 in the morning, it was over. The guests left carrying masks like relics. The chandeliers dimmed. The Plaza added another memory. The morning after. The newspapers were unanimous. It was the party of the century. The guest list was printed in full. Columns dissected who mattered now and who did not. Capote had succeeded beyond his wildest imagination. What he did not know, what the Plaza already understood, was that peaks are dangerous places, because there is nowhere to go but down. The betrayal. Capote never finished another major book. Fame turned toxic. Expectations crushed him. He drank. He stalled. And then, in 1975, he published excerpts from Answered Prayers, a thinly disguised novel that revealed the secrets of the very women who had adored him for decades, his swans. They recognized themselves immediately. Divorces, affairs, cruelties. Doors slammed shut. Invitations stopped coming. The man who had once united America's elite into one room now ate alone. The end of the host. Capote died in August 1984 at 59 years old in the home of Joanne Carson, one of the few friends who had not abandoned him. The obituaries mentioned the black and white ball. They always do, as if that night contained everything worth remembering. Perhaps it did. What the Plaza knew all along. The Grand Ballroom continued hosting galas, debutante balls, charity dinners, corporate events. None of them mattered the same way, because the Plaza had already seen what happens when humans try to freeze perfection. It always breaks them. The final truth. Stand on Fifth Avenue at dusk. Watch the Plaza turn gold as the sun fades. Watch tourists photograph a facade they think represents wealth, elegance, a vanished golden age. They are wrong. The Plaza is not a monument. Monuments honor the dead. The Plaza is something else. It is a machine for stories. It does not care who you are. It does not care what you want. It does not care how famous you become. It will outlive you. People arrive believing their stay is special. They leave behind only a room to be cleaned. The chandeliers keep burning. The elevators keep rising. The doors keep opening. Someone is checking in right now. They have no idea what happened in that room before them, and the Plaza will never tell.